So normally what we would do is, with the social contract, we would spend a lot more time being able to do that. This particular workshop is very much a condensed workshop. We're pushing into 3 hours, it would normally take a couple of days to do. Therefore, we're not going to be able to go through the entire construction of a social contract, which means 2 things. 1, you're only going to be able to get a tape, and 2, you've got some homework. Both as a group and individually.
Let me add one more. So I'll just add one more thing. There's a project going on now in the US, sponsored by a few law professors. And what they found out was a lot of countries in the world, for their constitution, they just copied and pasted. They're now analyzing a lot of the words. So a lot of countries are living with constitutions that they didn't even know they were making. So this process of making a social contract like Brexit takes a number of time, but at a very minimum, it begins to capture what we share and lays the foundation. When countries just borrowed and copied and pasted, they did their citizens a great disservice. And hopefully, like, it's only one country I know of in the world that has 4 arms of government. Most of the other 3 have just 3. And that was one of the things most people just copied and pasted.
So tell me which one has 4.
Taiwan. Taiwan has a group that will always investigate the government. So it's not, we have 3 arms of government, the legislature, the executive, and judiciary. And when we have problems like Watergate and all that, the Justice Ministry now has to appoint an independent council, and that again goes through a lot of politics. Okay, but in Taiwan, it is permanently there as a watchdog, and it's funded so that the fund does not depend on any of the other 3 arms funding it. So that way, they are dealing with corruption quite squarely. So they have 4 arms of government, but the rest have 3, and so they are all just supplementing themselves. So this social contract is very, very important because it's what binds us together, particularly for cultures that are heterogeneous. Each of the different, like in European Union, which is like India. India is like EU. They're French, they're Germans, they're English, all with different rules. So when we mix together, it's important to begin to see what do we share in common, where are difficulties, and we can work it out. But if it's not explicit, we don't know exactly where our biases and prejudices are. So this is very important for heterogeneous cultures that need to find new ways of working together.
The other thing I would tell you, this is art. What you just created is art, any art. So don't treat it as anything sacred. It is certainly meant to evolve and to iterate. It's merely a start. Jim Collins in the book Good to Great said, there's the keys to success are 1, getting the right people onto the bus, getting the wrong people off of the bus. And the thing we always add is, and then having the right conversations. And so, getting the right people in the room is the first step. The next step is having the right conversations. And what this does is it helps stimulate the right kinds of conversations. And the reason we do this particular is because before we can start with all the nouns, the things we're going to do and how and what, we need to talk about the emotions. What's going to make us feel good about doing it? And you just did that. So, the winners, it's not even the winners, like a category, but the words that most resonated with you are the words that are up on the board. And one thing that was interesting is this word audacious, which is more of an adjective than it is a verb. What? Which is more of a verb. But I thought it was interesting that people really resonated with this word of being audacious. And bold, I guess another way of saying is being bold. Which again goes to those things of dreaming big and thinking big and not being afraid to do this. So be sure to kind of include that in collaboration. Believe in beliefs, empowerment. And I love the word empower. It's one of my favorite words. Empower, engage, enroll. Sharing. Solutions is interesting because that's very much a noun, and that's but it also shows a proclivity to action. that you can feel all these things, but eventually these are meaningful to drive an outcome, and those outcomes come in the form of solutions. So there's nothing wrong with that. And then the having the empathy, the ethics, and the fairness. Again, people really responded to this concept of fairness over advantage. So the next steps that you will do when you go from here with the social contract is you can either take a template, as Ade was saying, most countries actually just copy the United States Constitution. And whether intentional or unintentional, a lot of people say, well, it expresses everything we feel, that the forefathers that did us did such a good job of kind of expressing that it's just easier to start with that template. And in general, we always feel it easier to start by either adding to something or deconstructing something than it is to kind of create something new. It's just human nature. So I will leave that up to you in terms of how you do it. You've got the template for how to create the social contract, which is make sure you come with a statement that asserts your assumptions, that states your assumptions.
The template?
What?
The template. Oh, you give us.
Yeah, it's in the presentation. Yeah, okay, you have that. That states what your assumptions are coming to this. And again, I've given you 2 examples. We can certainly give you a lot more to look at and inspire you. To make sure you have something that this is our expectation of what we have. You've even started by saying it is our expectation that some of these things will happen. And the third is be very clear on what you're committing to and what you hope for as an outcome. And again, that's a group process. It'll probably go over a couple of days. And when you get it done, it will be imperfect, and that's totally fine. The other thing you can do is actually crowdsource it, so you can put this together and put it up on a website, as the Russians did, and then people who commented on not only about their commitment to it, but ways that it can be improved. And so the document actually evolved as people contributed to it and signed on to it. So I like that idea of an organic document. We're going to move now to the canvas, because this is kind of the crux of what we're talking about today. We see the ecosystem is really the confluence of all this great intellectual capital, human capital, financial capital, and physical capital all coming together. But it's really where opportunities and ideas, talent, capital, and ideas come together to form new opportunities. There's a lot of questions on here. These questions are not meant to be literal. I put them on to be figurative. The reason we have these questions in the canvas is because, as I said, is to stimulate conversation, and 2, hopefully that's going to lead you to asking your own sets of questions. So what these questions are: for leaders, who has the reputation, resources, and commitments to lead new initiatives? Who will champion these initiatives within their own organizations? How can leaders and champions be more inclusive? So this is just, again, meant as a box to figure out who are the people that are going to take us into the next generation? Who are the people who bring the wisdom and the industrial knowledge and the institutional mindset to what we're doing? But also, who are the people who represent the future that we need to have engaged? Who are going to not only change the paradigm, but are going to lead us and our children into the next future? And the resources. What resources are available to aspiring entrepreneurs? Knowledge, mentorship, cloud hosting, etc. What sources of capital are there in the marketplace? We believe in a robust and healthy capital food chain. It's not just about venture. It's about having lots of different forms. What is the volume and quality of the talent in our labor pool? What are the main sources of innovation ideas, discoveries, and invention? And what resources are available to service and support organizations that are interacting with the entrepreneurs? So things such as workforce development, training, skilling, and reskilling workers, and upskilling workers. Because this is an older version that doesn't have the kind of communication box in there. So infrastructure, what is the density and quality of the providers, the business providers? What we have found conclusively in these innovation ecosystems is that there's a whole community that sits under all these innovation providers. So it's not just about universities and academics financial people, and government. It's also a whole set of business providers, lawyers, accountants, consultants, architects. What role do they play? What is their nature? How are they interacting with the system? You had, when we did our workshop in Mumbai the other day, JM Financial was a big sponsor of that. It's wonderful to see these business support organizations really supporting the innovation efforts. And why? What is the local level of serial entrepreneurship? Do you have serial entrepreneurs here? People who don't do things once, they do things 5 to 10 times. They give back of their time, and they give back of their energy. What does the physical infrastructure look like? Airports, internet connection, broadband, bandwidth availability. What are the core sectors of the local economy? What is your traded economy here? What does it have the potential to be? What are the strongest regional comparative advantages? So if you were a business, if you were an entrepreneur coming in to pitch to us, one of the questions we ask is, what is your competitive advantage? Competitive, sustainable advantage. Tell me 2 or 3 things you can do that no one else does, or 2 or 3 things you do so much better than everyone else. Do those things exist? And if they don't exist today, is there the potential for them to exist if they were just supported? Under culture, where do people come from? How diverse is our system? What are their value systems? What is their motivation? Is it money, reputation, lifestyle? Is it just self-expression? Why do people live here? Is it because they have to live here, or they choose to live here? If they choose to live here, what went into that choice? What are the amenities of places? An example there was, the state of Florida in the United States paid over $1 billion to bring one of our research institutes in San Diego to Florida, the Scripps Research Institute. And they gave them some wonderful land in West Palm Beach. It was some old swampland that they had fixed up. And they built it, and they began construction on it, and they came out and they hired my group. And they said, we're having trouble, we're building this thing, but we're having trouble getting people to come. Why is that? We have all this money, we've got prestige, we've got a big name brand attached to us. We said, because you were missing amenities in place, that when you bring these academics into teaching or to work in your laboratories, they bring with them a family. Children, so do you have good school? Do you have artistic outlets for them to do things? Do you have shopping, restaurants? If not, so what are your amenities of places? Places people will want to live here. How do you create and maintain a sense of urgency? So what you're doing, I know Praful in my conversations with them, always exhibits a sense of urgency. That, the time is now to make this stuff happen. How do you get that same sense of urgency aligned to the other people in the community? Or does it even exist where people are saying, yeah, this is interesting, but I can wait 10 years? What kind of innovation social networks exist? So what are the networks that you're already tapping into, the social networks? How do people deal with uncertainty, risk, or randomness currently? How is failure perceived? Do you build for perfection, or do you build for iteration? In other words, do you have a culture that only accepts perfection, or is it fine with the whole Microsoft model of don't worry, be crappy? Role models. Who are the local entrepreneurs that have built successful companies? Who are the local entrepreneurs that haven't yet been successful, and what can we learn from their failures? What regions have similar attributes and resources that we aspire to? What organizations have shared visions and values? And are there other regions with successful innovation ecosystems that we can learn from or emulate? Under engagement, where, when, and how do stakeholders interact? What are the current mechanisms by which people interact? How do ideas, talent, and capital come together? What are the lines of communications between the partners? How do people communicate? How often do they communicate? How do members of the community currently collaborate with each other? Formal or informal? I love this concept of formal and informal interactions. How does the community engage externally with global partners? What are the mechanisms by which they do that? How do young people get involved? How are you reaching out to youth? And what forums exist that basically serve to break down the professional and social hierarchies that exist? Do any kind of boundary-spanning organizations that dismantle hierarchies exist? Activities? What are people doing to stimulate innovation entrepreneurship?
entrepreneurship, and how are these people collaborating with each other? What activities drive participation and action in the community? And what events create the buzz and the momentum, the velocity in the community? And then the stakeholders are, well, you have to find who the stakeholders are for yourself. Who are the entrepreneurs, the business providers, the inventors, the capital providers? And this is not meant to be a literal thing. But do you really understand who you serve in your day-to-day work? Do you really know who they are? You'd be surprised the number of time entrepreneurs come in and pitch to us with their ideas, and it's apparent that they don't really know their customer very well. In fact, one of the exercises that we do is I give my entrepreneurs, I put their presentation away and I give them a blank balance sheet. And I say, this isn't your bank statement, this is your customer's bank statement. Where do you sit on your customer's balance sheet? And if you can't explain that, you probably don't know your customer very, very well. It's the same thing. It's where are you going to affect and how are you going to engage your stakeholders? So when we do the first iteration of the canvas, we're not going to have each group attack every box. It'll be too overwhelming and we don't have enough time. So what we're going to do is we're going to chunk this out. We're going to have each group, because there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So roughly we've got 5 tables here, 9 categories. So each group's going to just take 2 boxes, and then we're going to have a conversation about each one. And then we're going to let the rest of you kind of weigh in on what you've kind of put on. The first canvas, the first time we do this, is what does the community look like today? You're an urban planner, or you're an innovation planner, an architect. You're going to go out in the community, you're going to do this assessment, and you have to come back and report to us. So what does it look like today? Again, think of these questions not so literally. The purpose of this, as I said at the beginning, if there's one goal that I'd like you to walk out of this room with, it's not how to have all the answers, but how to ask the questions. And so if you would ask your own questions, you may say that these aren't even the right questions, and I'm asking the completely wrong questions. That's completely fine. You're smarter than I am. The thing is, ask the questions that you think would be meaningful for it. So for this group, I'd like you to take 2 boxes, and you guys are going to take leaders. What? Oh, that's right. I forgot.